So today we'll be working in my workbook called The Journey to Mount Sinai, which is on Exodus chapters 13 through 19. Looking at the table of contents, we have already completed the first three chapters. We started with the firstborn and the Passover, which is at the very start of their trip to Mount Sinai. They have already gone from Ramses to Succoth, which is still in Egypt. And here we have the understanding of the Passover feast, where they're supposed to have the Passover feast every year of their life. And so this establishes that. We also have the Hebrew calendar created at this point as well. Then, as they travel down towards Mount Sinai, even though their destination is Canaan, which is east of them. But they're going to travel down to Mount Sinai. Now, God has them do a strange trip to make it look as though they're confused and that they don't know what they're doing and stuff, so that when Pharaoh hears about the error that they made, he's going to go after them with full force. God had intended that so that he would then take away Pharaoh's army as well. So they're on the shores of the Red Sea, and the Egyptians come, and they come through the pass, and the Israelites can see them. And you have 2.4 million people on this beach area, and the Egyptians coming down through the pass. And the Israelites are starting to get really, really nervous because they could see the Egyptians. And so Moses says, watch, wait, and see. And so the pillar of cloud, or the pillar of fire, depending on the time of day, but the pillar of cloud moves from in front of the Israelites to the back of the Israelites, and then changes to the pillar of fire. And I would imagine it's at the exit of the pathway that comes down to the beach, so that nobody can get through. Both sides can't get through. This gives the Israelites time to gather their stuff, because they already hear that Moses is going through, his rod is going to part the Red Sea, and they are going to travel through the Red Sea on dry ground. And so that is all the prelude to start up. We're going to be now in chapter 4, crossing the Red Sea. Crossing the Red Sea, Exodus 14:21 to 31. Exodus 14:21. Then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all that night, turning the seabed into dry land. So the people of Israel walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on each side. What did Moses have to do? He raised his hand over the sea. Remember, the rod is in his hand. How did the Lord open up a path through the water? With the strong east wind. How long did the wind blow? Blew all night. So they blew it all night. And so all night they're camped. They're not traveling. They're going to be doing this, I guess, at dawn, I guess. We'll see. Therefore, this is what is happening during the night when the Egyptians are prevented from coming through. The Lord used the wind to move the water to either side of the pathway through the Red Sea. So he's raised up the waters, and he's using the east wind also to dry the land. Number 4, so the people of Israel walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground with walls of water on either side. Did the Israelites travel during the night or in the morning? At first, the scripture seems to suggest that God took all night to have the wind turn the seabed into dry land, and then the Israelites traveled. But that cannot be the case due to the large group of Israelites and the fact that, as we will see, the Egyptians are going after Israelites near the time the sun rises. Why? Because, the pillar of fire will turn into a pillar of cloud. And they can get through a pillar of cloud, technically. I mean, I don't know if they could, because it's from God, but so they're going to have to all get through before that changes. Do you think Moses had to keep his rod or staff up during the whole time the Israelites went through the Red Sea? Why or why not? I'd have no idea. I would think that he would. I think he would be the last one through. It's like a light, a beacon shining the way, is my opinion. And they all would come through like that. That's my thought. But we don't have any verse to say one way or the other. Exodus 14:23. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Again, this is at dawn when the pillar of fire turns to pillar of cloud. At that point, all the Israelites are nearly through and on to the other side. Now it came to pass in the morning watch that the Lord looked down upon the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud. So it's at the point of change. And he troubled the army of the Egyptians. He took off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." The morning watch is a period of 3 to 6 a.m. in the morning. So sunrise. Early in the morning. What time is the morning watch? 3 to 6 a.m. in the morning. What did the Lord look through at the Egyptians? The pillar of fire and cloud. So notice the Lord is looking through a pillar of fire and cloud, which would literally mean at dawn when the pillar changes from fire to a cloud. What did the Lord take off the chariots? Their wheels. Can the fast riding chariots go anywhere without wheels? No. Who does the Egyptian soldiers say the Lord fights for? He fights for Israel. The scriptures continue. Exodus 14:26. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, on their chariots and on their horsemen." And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth, while the Egyptians were fleeing into it. So the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Then the waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. Not so much as one of them remained. What was Moses to do for the waters to come back upon the Egyptian? Stretch out your hand over the sea that the waters may come back on the Egyptians. So at one time he must have lowered his hand, maybe when the Israelites came through, and then he's stretching it out now to close it. Looking back at the opinion question on page 36, now do you think Moses had to keep his rod or staff up over his head throughout all the Israelite travel across the Red Sea? And why? I think there was a time where he could lower it because he too had to travel across, and that usually would take both hands on the reins or whatever he's using. What time of day did Moses, excuse me, what time of day did Moses raise his rod or staff over the sea? When morning appeared. What all did the waters cover over the Egyptians? The waters covered the Egyptians, the chariots, and the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh. Was any of the Egyptian army spared? No, not a single one was spared. Exodus 14:29. But the children of Israel had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. So the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Thus Israel saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt. So the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Who did the Lord save Israel from? The Egyptians. Exodus 4:18 states that with this event, the Egyptians would know the Lord, the true God. But Exodus 14:31 above also shows that this event worked on the hearts of whom as well? Also on the hearts of the Israelites. They had to relearn who God was all about. Aside from the Lord, who else did the people believe in? Moses. Aside from this miracle, the Israelites saw a lot of miracles by God in Egypt. Can you remember the 10 plagues? 1, the Nile turns into blood. 2, frogs. 3, lice. 4, flies. 5, livestock pestilence. 6, boils. 7, hail. 8, locusts. And 9, darkness. And then 10th was the death of the firstborn. So we're at the end of this chapter. So let's go through the crossword. The morning watch is from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And number 3, the Israelites walked through this Red Sea on dry ground. Number 5, the Lord told Moses, stretch your hand over the sea. Number 7, the Israelites saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Number 8, the Lord looked down at the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud. Number 9, the wind blew all night. 1 down. What came from the east that God used to open the path through the sea? A wind. Number 2, who went after the Israelites into the Red Sea? The Egyptians. Number 4, the Israelites believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. Number 6, what time of day was it that Moses stretched out his hand? Morning. Right. Morning. Correct. This is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.